Hi guys, welcome to the Emperor Cork YouTube channel. Please drop a like and subscribe. This video is just basically about how I really got involved in history. My dad used to work in the City Council in Cork, and there was an old bookshop at the end of Barrack Street, Unida, and you could go in and get comics for 5p, and of course you could bring them back and you get 2p from, so you'd have constant supply. But on a Thursday night, my dad used to come home with a bag, and there'd be comics like Buster, Dandy, Beano, Commando, Battle, Roy the Rovers. My sister had Judy and all those other types of things, and different types of magazines. But it was these magazines or these comics that I really loved. Now, when I read them, I was escaping a life of abuse. And to me, I was in the comic book. I could feel the bombs. I was running in my head, hiding from them. I could see the planes coming. And when I slept at night, so it was making it very real for me. And even though I knew there were comics, but it just grabbed my head and my mind, and I was there. But the one book that had a really massive impact on me in my life was a book called The Brendan Voyage by Tim Severin. And the next picture you're going to see is the inside of that book. Now, what this is an ancient Irish manuscript, and Tim, an amazing guy, but he used the manuscripts as a source of material for his journey, and the journey of the Brendan voyage was to prove that the Irish monks did discover America. So he took what he found in the manuscript and he applied it in real life. There was also a television program about it, and it was just absolutely amazing. And this is Tim himself. And I just really, really fell into it. I just adored every aspect of it. The writing was fantastic, but he goes into detail, and he went down to Dingle, he sourced the leather hides, he put on a type of bitumen onto it, he rigged it up as he believed that they done back in the day, and he used the Irish manuscripts in the British Museum as the source. And this world, I never knew it existed at the age of 12. So when he was relating in the book, I was there, and I was one of the monks on the boat. I dreamt about the book, I dreamt about the journey, and they brought out a television program about it, and it was just absolutely fascinating stuff. And Tim, Tim was an amazing guy. I got to know him a couple of years later, and I got to ask him as a child. Well, I was an adult, but the child's mind came in, and I asked him about it, and he said something really, really important to me, which was actually in the book. And what he said to me was, he said, Dave, there's many ways to read manuscripts. He goes, you got to go deep, 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 deep into them. You got to just ignore the style they were written, take out the bias, take out the times they were written in, and he said, you'll find the real story behind it. Now, this was in the book as well, and it was just the most amazing journey. I can absolutely recommend this book to anybody. And so, for a 12-year-old child that was trying to escape a life of abuse in the family, but also in the institutions, this became the book that I hid, and this became my escape, and I was blown away. I can't begin to tell you the idea of being 12 and realizing that 2000 years ago that there was monks, Irish monks, that went to America, and it blew my mind because if you're outside Ireland, it was an English bias system of education, and we got the sanitized version of history. Columbus went to America, Walter Raleigh brought tobacco and potatoes, the King Henry the Fifth, the Sixth, the Seventh, you name it. we had it, and it was ramped. The education system in Ireland at the time was completely designed to be subservient to the English education system, and it goes back in at the start of the state. Yeah, so it was just right there. Irish people were that went to university were just fit for the British civil service. Oh, of course, there was outliers and people went on to do different things, but that was the overarching policy. We get Irish people fit and ready for the civil service, and of course, it's Ireland, so Catholics were pushed down even in the 70s, even in the 80s. Um, and Protestants were brought up through Trinity. Now, if you want to see and understand what it was like, a quick Google will bring you back to comedians in the 70s and what they were saying about Irish people. And it was intimidation, it was fear. You'd cross the boat and you were dragged out, you were in the IRA. That was the first thing. Now, I'm speaking from the 80s, but it was all the ways through. And they viewed the Irish as just subservient to the English king. And of course, you got a factor in here as well. 1845 onwards, eugenics, we were taught less of than apes. We were below them, and they let us know, and they applied it. So anything that came out of Ireland in any historical way was just looked at as, sure, the Irish couldn't do that. They're thick savages, they're turnip farmers, and that was the overriding um, English view of Irish people. And again, I go back to you and say it's really worth the while just to go back and look at what the comedians are saying, and they're full of slurs. So you were at a complete disadvantage, and oh, you daren't stick your head up and say you're wrong. No, again, there was outliers in the education system. I had a teacher called Mr. Power, and there was an Irish songbook, and every day he had us singing rebel songs, the old ones from 1798, and never forget your Irish, and he'd beat the stick in rhythm. Come on, sing the crappy boy, and he'd be walloping the table. But I can't emphasize enough, particularly if you're one of my great great grandchildren that are going to be looking at this in years to come, the impact that this book had on me, and it just opened up my world. It was just the most amazing book, the most amazing impact, and he done it. He at the end, he no, in fairness to them, it took two journeys. The boat broke up off Greenland. The boat broke up off Greenland, and he went back the next season, rebituated it, and went it on. But in the book, he explains, and in the television series, which doesn't really do the book justice, but he explains in the manuscript. They said we rested on the body of a monster, and he was able to say, look, they're the school in Wales that you'd find off Greenland, Iceland, and the island of the clouds. So he was able to visit these places. And the book is technical because it goes in about wind speed, and it goes in, it's a boater's dream. But yeah, that was my journey. And in a roundabout way, when I met him, I always dreamed what he was like. He must be this fantastic man and explorer. In my head, he was a man on top of a mountain with long hair and a flag, and he flying away. But what was really interesting and interesting to other people is that he was an Englishman who loved Ireland and considered himself to an extent an Irishman, and his love of Ireland and his love of the manuscripts and understanding the bias that was against the Irish at the time, he attempted to show that Irish history was real. It wasn't myth, it wasn't legend, it wasn't copied from Greek mythology, it wasn't any of those things that the English academic system was saying about it. And while it didn't exactly hit the point with the impact, but he with the impact of the program and the book, what I learned from that is going to change Irish history. Now, in a roundabout way, I have a fantastic story to tell you about Tim, and yeah, and I'm going to leave that for another video. But certainly, I can wholeheartedly say that anything that came from history stemmed for the love of Ireland. That Tim Severin, an Englishman who loved Ireland, considered himself Irish to a degree, just came in the book, and it just came across, and I carry that inside my heart, and it still burns today, and is still bright. And I actually have 3 copies of that book, and every once in a while I'll pull it out, even though I've read it hundreds of times, and I just sit and read it simply for that joy, because we're told, or the Irish, the English. But here was a man that broke the mold on so many different levels, and to me, he was that guy on a mountain. He was that man with the flag. I can't tell you how much I love him, and the love of history that came from it. And it got me involved in Irish manuscripts, and it got me involved in the history of Ireland. And it got me involved, the history of Ireland that was expressed at the time was potato, 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 which was the favourite catcall of comedians and people in the English legacy media in the 70s and 80s. And we were stuck in the famine, and we were stuck in the trauma of the famine, and we couldn't look past it as a nation. We had no identity, even in the 70s and 80s. We just didn't have it. It just came into our souls, and this guy was a light in the darkness. So look, that's just the pretext. I'll probably end up making this video again someday, but just to lay a marker on how I got involved in history, and really to acknowledge how books have saved me. I can't tell you what it's like to have the darkness outside to wake up, and just to have that book to escape and become an adventurer for a couple of hours truly saved my life. So guys, like and subscribe, but also stay tuned, because I'm dropping more videos in the next couple of days, and those videos will hopefully blow your mind, and hopefully give you a different view on Irish history than the one that we were taught. So yeah, Tim Severin, rest in peace, my friend, and yeah, you've done an awful lot for Irish history. Thanks guys, like and subscribe.